These players have huge upside, but you do have to take on some risk. Today, we are breaking down 5 players who have a high ceiling, but a floor that can make you a little bit squeamish. But before we dig in, head over to 4for4.com and use promo code YouTube to get yourself 25% off any subscription plan.
Christian Watson, wide receiver, 6'4", 208 pounds.
Love, Watson, open, Watson, got it, touchdown, Pecker.
Very hard to get that kind of size speed combination with the 4.36 in the 40 at 6'4".
Christian Watson, the intended receiver, and he's got it. A big play up top on the first play.
Through his first 2 seasons in the NFL, Christian Watson has proven that he can put up big fantasy numbers when he's on the field. Through 18 games of action, Watson has scored 17-plus half PPR fantasy points on 6 occasions and had a wild stretch of 4 games back in 2022 in which he scored 7 touchdowns while averaging 19.5 yards per catch. If he has his hamstring issues truly sorted out, we might see more of that moving forward. But Watson's downs have been brutally low for fantasy and otherwise. On top of missing 16 of a possible 34 regular season games, he has scored less than 6 fantasy points on 10 occasions. As a contested catch deep ball specialist, he caught 33.3% of his 18 contested opportunities while hauling in only 66.7% of on-target throws that traveled 15 or more air yards in 2023. Bo Melton, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed each did a better job of catching those on-target deep shots. His potential downside is that he's a one-trick pony and not the number 1 perimeter option the Packers likely thought they had when they took him in the second round of the 2022 NFL Draft. Like every other pass catcher in Green Bay in 2024, it's going to be hard to get truly consistent week-to-week fantasy production out of any of them. If Watson's hamstrings are fully healthy, we should see a far better number than we saw last year, but that doesn't mean he's suddenly going to be absorbing 7 to 8 targets every single game. The best way to approach Watson is to target him as often as possible in best ball leagues, but it doesn't mean we should be afraid of his lows in redraft. His highs could be fantastic for anyone with the patience to deal with some stinkers from time to time. It seems as if fantasy drafters and head coach Mike LaFleur have decided that there will be no wide receiver 1 in Green Bay this season. But that doesn't mean Watson won't simply score the most points on this roster with some week winning performances along the way.
Javonte Williams takes the handoff, and Williams, nice second effort, still going. Javonte Williams carrying defenders.
Javonte Williams will be 1 more year removed from his 2022 ACL tear as he heads into 2024. Back in 2021, Williams was a fantasy stud as a rookie, earning 254 opportunities en route to the overall RB17 finish in half PPR leagues. He is part of a convoluted backfield at the moment, but if he can take that number 1 role, he can allow the rest of the depth chart to fight for scraps. With that said, he did look like a shell of his former self last season, earning 3.6 yards per carry and a 46th ranked 2.71 yards created after contact. His subsequent 9.7 half PPR points per game landed him as the RB32, boosted up by his 55 targets. Granted, he may have rushed back onto the field before he was ready, but that didn't stop the team from adding Audric Estime in the draft while retaining both Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin. He could be a complete stay away in a loaded backfield depth chart. We've been expecting the Broncos to make a move on one of these running backs, but they have stood pat. Is Williams simply a spoke in the running back by committee wheel? If we can use this deployment in week 1 of the preseason as a data point, it sure seems as if they consider him the RB1. He was allotted only 9 total snaps, while McLaughlin and Estime were left to prove what they could do with 19 and 18 respective snaps. Even Perine with 13 and UDFA Blake Watson with 12 got more run than Javonte. There's no doubt that we have an ambiguous backfield on our hands, and it has pushed Javonte Williams down into the 9th round. Not in love with the situation, but taking Sean Payton's RB1 that deep in a draft is a risk I'm willing to take.
On tape, loved, but I saw from Jermaine Burton.
On to Tennessee, then Atlanta. Woodside, throwing deep.
Despite early camp hype for incumbent receiver Andre Yosivas, rookie Jermaine Burton is an intriguing selection in best ball drafts and very late in redraft leagues. While it doesn't look like he will be logging consistent snaps and therefore consistent fantasy points through the early portions of the season, he could provide spike weeks when it matters most during your playoffs. The explosiveness and big playability could slowly sleep its way into the Bengals' game plan, particularly if T. Higgins plays similarly to his 2023 levels. Higgins is a phenomenal boundary receiver who has become the deep ball threat on this offense, but he still leaves a lot of meat on the bone. including his 1.66 yards per route run and 34.8% contested catch rate from last year. During Cincinnati's first preseason game, Burton lined up exclusively out wide, running 17 routes on his 19 snaps. He would catch all 3 of his targets for 82 yards, including 2 bombs straight down the sideline. Both of those long catches came against backup secondary pieces in the fourth quarter, but it was great to see him make the most of his limited second half opportunities. Though some potential issues with character concerns, including one scout labeling him an undisciplined player, make him a huge question mark in year 1, his upside in this offense was made clear, and that was with Logan Woodside throwing him the ball. Prior to the game, Burton's ADP had already slid close to a full round since those aforementioned camp reports were released near the end of July. If they continue to slide, he should be an even bigger target deep in the drafts. On home league platforms like ESPN and Yahoo, he's coming off of draft boards in the very last round if he gets drafted at all. If your league has deep benches, I would be aiming for him every time.
Stands tall, throws outside, has a man, Palmer, touchdown! 12 yards, Herbert to Josh Palmer.
Palmer had a mostly mediocre 4 seasons at the University of Tennessee before entering the 2021 NFL Draft. He never eclipsed 35 receptions or 500 receiving yards over a full season, and he only notched 1 100-yard performance in 36 starts. But his athletic profile and above-average fundamentals pushed the Chargers to take him in the 3rd round. His rookie season more or less fell flat, with his 295 routes ranking 6th on the team behind Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Jalen Guyton, Jared Cook, and Austin Eckler. Injuries and more efficiency pushed him further up the depth chart in the following 2 seasons, but he still hasn't logged 800-yard or 75 reception performance through 3 seasons in the league. So why even bother with Palmer in fantasy if he hasn't shown game-breaking ability through the last 7 years of play? Because he's never had an opportunity quite like the one in front of him. With Jim Harbaugh now in the picture, the Chargers had a max exodus of pass catchers this offseason. Keenan, Big Mike, and Eckler are all out of the picture, and the only replacements of note are veteran DJ Shark and second-round slot receiver Ladd McConkey, and a couple of former Ravens in the backfield. Palmer has notched 10 games without Keenan Allen over the previous 2 seasons, averaging 9.6 half PPR points and 7.6 targets per game. With all the target competition playing for different teams in 2024, Palmer should be able to use his versatility to counteract a more run-heavy team approach and log a route participation mark that will keep him on the field for a vast majority of Justin Herbert's dropbacks. We've never seen Palmer be a consistently viable fantasy option, and OC Greg Roman loves to run the ball. But as this team's wide receiver 1, it's worth the risk in double-digit rounds.
3rd straight time to Mostert. There's the Miami record. The 19th touchdown of the season.
Risk and Raheem Mostert as an NFL player go hand in hand. Over his 9-year career, the former 49ers and Ravens and Bears and Browns running back has missed nearly 60 possible games and is now heading into his age 32 season. Doesn't get much riskier than that. But last season's performance in this explosive Miami Dolphins offense tells us all we need to know about his fantasy upside. By accruing 20 rush attempts from within the opponent's 5-yard line, he ranked 3rd among the league's running backs, with his 12 goal line touchdowns tied for 1st. While he could certainly regress from his otherworldly 21 total touchdowns, that doesn't mean his efficiency will necessarily follow suit. His 3.40 yards created after contact ranked 9th, and his 8.7 yards after the catch ranked 15th among all running backs with at least 25 receptions. His eventual 17 half PPR points per game landed him as fantasy as RB3, far outkicking his ADP of RB41. Current ADP has him splitting the difference as the RB24 in the 7th or 8th round. Drafters are still wary of the aging running back, which makes sense, but his potential upside is far more valuable than his downside at that price. Sure, Mostert could wrap up as an IR candidate and sink that mid-round pick, but he could also outproduce a lot of guys that are going 3 or 4 rounds earlier, even if the backfield remains intact the entire season. Should Devon Achane miss any time, as he did in the pre- and regular season in 2023, there's not much reason to think Mostert won't be a weekly locked-in top 5 option. DeAndre Swift, Zamir White, Ramondre Stevenson, and other options who are going a round or more ahead of Mostert aren't likely to be afforded that kind of opportunity.